The Lego brand is the most famous in the toy world today, even better known than Hasbro and the Barbie doll. But few people know that the Danish company began its history as a simple wooden manufacturer, and the first Lego toys were made entirely of wood. However, the company grew to such a size that its famous construction sets were copied by other pirate companies who churned out similar sets en masse. As Seth Godin once said, "If you're copied, it means you've really done something great." On January 28, 1958, the Danish company Lego registered a patent for the self-locking plastic bricks known worldwide as Lego bricks. 63 years later, it remains one of the world's leading toy manufacturers. Yet, there were periods in its history when Lego was on the brink of bankruptcy and collapse. In honor of this memorable date, we recall what happened. The origins of the company. The future founder of Lego, Ole Christensen, was born in Billund, Denmark, in 1891. He was the 10th child in a poor farming family. His parents lacked even the most basic income, but they still managed to provide their children with a basic education. Ole trained as a carpenter, worked for several years in Germany and Norway, and in 1916, he returned home and decided to start his own business. With the money he earned, Christensen bought a local carpentry workshop specializing in furniture and building materials. Business was good, and Ole was able to afford to hire workers, got married, and moved into a house next to the workshop. His wife gave birth to 4 sons, and as soon as they were old enough, the boys began helping their father. In 1924, they accidentally set fire to wood shavings scattered throughout the workshop, and the workshop and house burned to the ground. Christensen merely shrugged. He'd long been thinking about expanding his business, and took advantage of the tragedy to build a new, larger and better workshop. This fortitude proved useful to Ole several years later. With the onset of the Great Depression, orders plummeted, and in 1932, his wife died suddenly, leaving Ole with 4 sons to raise. To make ends meet, Christensen was forced to lay off all his employees and switch to making the most inexpensive items possible, such as stepladders, stools, and ironing boards. As additional advertising, he decided to craft miniature samples of his products and display them in the shop window. The miniatures gave Ole the idea of toys. The calculation was quite simple. In hard times, people will skimp on everything. They won't move into a new home and won't renovate their old one. They'll do without new utensils or furniture, but there will always be money for a new toy for a child. So, in 1932, Christensen's workshop began producing wooden cars, airplanes, houses, and other toys. Ole wasn't mistaken. Local farmers did indeed buy new toys for their children. But at first, they tried to pay with their own products. There was no money at all. However, the toys helped Ole stay afloat and even improve his business somewhat. He was able to hire workers again. By 1934, the workshop had grown to 6 people. Ole's children helped him as much as they could, especially his 3rd son, Gottfried. In 1934, Ole held a competition among his employees to find the best name for his company. The winner received a prize, a bottle of homemade wine. The wine must have been good, because he ultimately came up with the name himself, Lego, a combination of 2 other words, leg and God, which together mean play well. A few years later, the founder learned that the phrase Lego itself is Latin for I learn or I build. Clearly, this realization had a significant impact on the company's future history. Although, to say that the entire company thought about the name would be an exaggeration. Lego employed only 7 people at the time, passionate carpenters who thoroughly enjoyed creating new things, and even then, they cared about product quality. A sign hung on the wall by Ole Christensen towered over their workstations. Only the best is worthy. By 1936, the company already had a set of 40 different toys. Even then, they were far from cheap. Lego remains quite expensive today. Meanwhile, the company continued to produce not only toys, but also other wooden products. The 1940s saw many changes in the company's history. First, its only factory burned down, when timber supplies in Denmark began to be disrupted after World War E. Ole bought the country's first casting machine and began producing plastic toys. Immediately after the rebuilding process, it became clear that Lego would now focus solely on toys. The staff continued to grow throughout these years, reaching 40 employees by 1943. Exactly 1 year later, the Christensens finally officially registered the company, naming it Legetos Fabrikken Lego Billund AS. In 1947, a significant event occurred that forever changed the company's history. Lego acquired the rights to a design by English psychologist Hilary Harry Fisher Page. This was essentially a small plastic brick that could be connected to other similar pieces, making it possible to assemble even small structures. However, at the time, these structures were not yet fully integrated and therefore fell apart as quickly as they were assembled. But that was just the beginning. Ole's son, Gottfried, was already 30 years old by then, and was just as involved in the company's affairs as his father. Gottfried understood that these kinds of toys were the future. He was most intrigued by the product samples that the casting machine manufacturers sent along with the machine to demonstrate its capabilities. Among them were self-latching building blocks, patented in 1947 by British toymaker Hilary Fisher Page, founder of Kittycraft. The blocks were securely attached to one another, yet easily removable when needed. Page never fully realized the potential of his invention and quickly moved on to other ideas. But Ole and Gottfried saw the opportunity. They borrowed Page's idea, modernized it, and 2 years later patented their own automatically interlocking bricks, which became Lego bricks in 1953. Page himself never knew the role he played in Lego's rise. When another of his ideas failed in the mid-1950s, and Kittycraft faced bankruptcy, Hilary committed suicide. After his death, the Danes settled all potential copyright issues, paying the new owners of Kittycraft 45,000 for the residual rights to Page's self-locking building blocks. However, a well-borrowed idea alone wasn't enough for the Danish company's rise. In the early 1950s, both retailers and consumers viewed plastic toys with skepticism, if not disdain. So both Kittycraft and Lego bricks sold equally poorly. This saddened Gottfried, who became the company's junior managing director in 1954. Soon, he thought he had found a way out. In 1955, the company introduced the so-called system of play to its partners. From then on, all Lego bricks, regardless of when or in what country they were purchased, were fully compatible with each other. This system is still in effect today. All Lego bricks released in 1958 are fully compatible with bricks released in 2021. That same year, Lego released its first themed series, Town Plan, a collection of sets that could be used to build a single large city. A couple of years later, the Danes discovered the most suitable material for their plastic bricks. From that day on, all Lego pieces have been made of ABS plastic. The Lego brick, as we know it today, was patented on January 28, 1958. In 2008, Lego reissued one of the classic sets from the first wave. The man in the photo is Ole grandson, Kjær, the company's CEO from 1979 to 2004. Expanding borders in 1958, Ole Christensen died of a heart attack. He was only 66 years old. Management of the company passed entirely to Gottfried, who bought out his older brother's shares. He now managed 140 people. By this time, Lego was still producing wooden toys. However, after another fire destroyed most of the wooden products in 1960. Gottfried decided that the company's future lay exclusively with plastic. The following decades were years of development and expansion. The Danes only began to explore foreign markets in 1955, and within 10 years, Lego sets were sold in 42 countries. In 1968, the first Legoland opened in Billund, attracting 625,000 visitors in its first year. In 1969, Lego introduced Lego Duplo large, twice the size bricks designed for the very youngest. In 1977, the Expert Builder line was introduced, more complex, unrealistic models, which a few years later evolved into Lego Technic. In addition to the city, space, medieval, and pirate themes were added. And in 1978, minifigs were introduced, the iconic yellow figures that remain an integral part of the brand. 40 years later, by 1991, the company was among the top 10 largest toy manufacturers in the world. Ups and downs. In 1992, Lego's profits began to decline for the first time. The decline was expected. In previous years, growth had been achieved primarily through the development of new markets. But by the early 1990s, the company's products were available almost everywhere. Moreover, patents for Lego's core products began to expire, and competitors quickly began to squeeze the Danish company out of the market, flooding store shelves with lower quality but cheaper products. Lego executives had been prepared for this, and decided to compensate for the lack of further expansion by expanding their product range in existing markets. But this plan didn't yield much results. A company might introduce 5 new themes a year instead of 1, but it couldn't expect the same consumer to buy all 5 new sets instead of 1. Then, the company's management decided to invest in new areas. In the 1990s, Lego began developing video games, actively building new Legolands, and opened its first branded stores. Furthermore, in the mid-1990s, the company retired most of the designers who had been developing new sets since the mid-1970s. They were replaced by innovators, young and ambitious graduates from leading European design colleges, brimming with revolutionary ideas and knowing nothing about toy design or Lego. As a result, the 1990s were marked by a string of costly, avoidable failures. Problems arose literally everywhere. New product lines that cost a fortune to develop failed miserably. Potentially profitable products were scrapped after the first few failures, and no one in management even thought to investigate the causes. Lego's bosses were willing to take risks, but they were unwilling to deal with losses and were unwilling to wait longer than one production cycle for results. Worst of all, the company's management was willing to sacrifice successful products for the sake of new product success. When Lego decided to expand into the toddler market in 2002, Lego Duplo was sacrificed. While Duplo sales in key markets had plateaued in recent years, in most European countries Duplo was the second most popular children's brand, behind only the core Lego brand. When it was discontinued and replaced by the new Lego Explore brand, both manufacturers and consumers reacted with hostility. Explore, Jackstone, Galador, Movie Maker. The list of failures from that period is long. Of course, there were some successful solutions. The Bionicle series, launched in 2001, proved a real hit, but Lego's biggest success at the turn of the millennium was its decision to invest in toy production based on film franchises and acquire the Star Wars license. Lego Star Wars simply conquered the market, exceeding even the most ambitious sales forecasts 5-fold. Interestingly, before acquiring the license, Peter O., head of the American division, had to win his own battle with management. When he first presented the idea to the board of directors, one of the vice presidents exclaimed passionately, "Over my dead body." I wonder if anyone saw him after the meeting. On the brink of collapse, the success of Lego Star Wars led Lego executives to believe in the magical power of licensing, and following Star Wars, the company acquired the rights to Winnie the Pooh and Harry Potter toys. Sales initially grew, but in 2003, they suddenly plummeted. By the end of the year, the company had accumulated $800 million in debt. Jürgen Vic Knudstorp, a newly hired analyst who had previously worked at the consulting firm McKinsey & Company, was tasked with understanding the reasons for the failure. When Knudstorp started working, he was horrified. It turned out that at the beginning of the 21st century, the company still lacked a proper accounting system. No one in management knew how Lego was making money or losing money. No one analyzed the profitability of new sets. What sold and generated the majority of profits, what didn't sell and incurred losses, and what sold but still incurred losses because the selling price was lower than the cost. It got to the point where the cost of producing just one piece in some sets exceeded the retail price of the entire set. The innovators who replaced Lego's old designers didn't think about cost effectiveness or efficiency. 90% of the pieces they designed for new sets were used only once, despite the fact that the cost of the mold alone could reach $50,000. Over the course of 10 years, the number of Lego pieces produced increased from 6,000 to 12,000, significantly increasing production, logistics, and storage costs. The company's infrastructure was expanding and becoming increasingly complex. Moreover, licensing wasn't quite the panacea everyone thought. Harry Potter and Star Wars sets sold well only during the release of the new films. Number film, no sales. As a result, much of the 2000 to Christmas wave remained on store shelves. Faced with mounting unsold inventory, major retailers began unloading merchandise at deep discounts. Trust in Lego was lost, and demand for the 2003 summer wave declined. When Knudstorp presented his analysis to the board of directors, he warned that things would only get worse. No one listened. Lego executives declared his calculations unfounded and that the situation would definitely improve. By the end of the year, the situation had deteriorated so much that many employees feared Lego wouldn't survive until next Christmas. The time had come for decisive action. When Vic Knudstorp finished his report in the summer of 2003, he thought his time at the company was over and he was about to be fired. 6 months later, Kjell Christensen, Oli's grandson, promoted Knudstorp to CEO and offered to save the company. Knudstorp didn't just save the company, he transformed it into one of the most powerful brands in the world. Within a few years, profits quadrupled. In 2014, Lego became the largest toy company in the world, overtaking Mattel after years of intense competition. How did he do it? First, he divested himself of non-core assets. The company closed its in-house video game development studio and sold all Legoland theme parks. Knudstorp regained control of production, 80% of which had been outsourced at the time, and half the range of parts produced. Lego discontinued its least popular lines, reintroduced the Duplo brand, and launched Lego Ideas, a special program allowing fans to submit ideas for their own sets. If an idea was approved and went into commercial development, its creator received 1% of the set's retail sales. Of course, not all measures were popular. Over the course of 10 years, the company's workforce was halved from 9,000 to 4,500. LEGO replenished its designer ranks with longtime LEGO fans and, over the course of several years, launched several truly popular products, including Ninjago, Mindstorms, and LEGO Architecture. The company continued to expand its license portfolio, adding Indiana Jones, The Lord of the Rings, and Marvel licenses account for 60% of sales in the US. The decision to abandon its in-house video game development studio and outsource all of that proved a real coup. While the company certainly released several hits in the 1990s, the LEGO video games truly achieved success after the license was transferred to the British studio Traveller's Tale. They still hold the license, and new games are released annually. And in 2014, LEGO Bricks finally hit the big screen. The LEGO movie earned $500 million worldwide and holds a 96% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes. The film marked the beginning of the LEGO cinematic universe, which currently includes 3 more films: the LEGO Batman movie, the LEGO Ninjago movie, and the LEGO Movie 2. All 4 films grossed over $1 billion, but the latter 2 underperformed at the box office, leaving the franchise's future up in the air. This was especially true after Warner Brothers, which still owns the 4 existing films, transferred distribution rights to future films to Universal. The company's management isn't resting on its laurels. They remember how quickly they found themselves on the edge of a cliff last time, especially since competition is getting tougher every year, and profits are starting to fall again. Some consumers are unhappy with LEGO's increasing reliance on licenses, apps, and video games, moving further and further away from traditional values. But then again, the consumer dictates the rules of the game, and what's the point of making the best product in the world if no one buys it?